I'm Will from Valatam. Um, like Shamika said before, we have worked with her and other clients here in the NOSA group, and we've helped them find virtual assistants and team members to help them with mostly their staffing agencies. I know most of you are all nursing healthcare in the healthcare business. To begin a little bit about what we do here in Valatam, Valatam stands for Virtual Assistant Latin America. All our virtual assistants are from Latin America. They're bilingual, so English is a second language they learn. All of them are college educated and they come from diverse backgrounds. For example, I'm a production engineer as working as account manager here as Valten, but we have also lawyers, doctors.
Really make life better for them, although he had no medications for him at that time. But that all said, and I've been involved with medication.
Oh, and I was completely muted. My bad. Okay, my bad. So let me start again. My bad. Apologies. Things about virtual assistant. This thing happens to everyone, even me who spends all their day stuck on Zoom. So to start before, I know all of you work in the health staff agency, mostly nurse staffing. Like we've helped with Shamika and other people in the group. To start off, here in Valatam stands for Virtual Assistants, Latin America. We have all our VAs come from Latin America. They're mostly from Venezuela, where I'm based from. They're also come from Colombia, Argentina, Ecuador, and Peru. All our VAs are college educated and bilingual. So we have a very diverse pool. For example, I'm a production engineer here working in Valatam, but we have also lawyers, we have economic majors, we have people who have experience in social media, we have people here who have also worked in modern languages, liberal arts, very diverse group of people who, based on the situation here in Latin America, find it very difficult to find employment in their area. So it is really a win-win for both the virtual assistants and for you as well to fill the time. Our main goal is always to make sure that you feel like even though the virtual assistant isn't your employee, that it works as an employee. Our main goal is not to have short-term projects, but projects that last 1 or 2 or more years. We have been working for more than 6 years now, and we have VAs who have been with clients for over 3 years. So it's really our main goal is to make sure that these projects that we work with any of you here become long-lasting. One of our strengths is always to make sure that our VAs are capable to do any task they're asked. That's why each month we will have a trial with new applicants. These virtual assistants always go through this trial to see their soft skills more than anything, because we feel that if you have strong soft skills, you're able to tackle and solve any problems any client may have. So I know many of you, while I'm doing this presentation, maybe try to think a little bit about some repetitive tasks, some tasks that you feel like are, like, to be honest, a waste of time of your time that you feel that you can do with other people, that you can delegate to other people. And so you can focus on what really matters in your business. So while I'm doing a presentation, think about tasks or chores or anything that you feel like you don't have time to do that you wish others would do. That is what a virtual assistant is really there for. We also see that most of our clients, the ones who really succeed, are the ones who have their procedures done and are ready, are able to plant it down right away. Like I said, everybody teaches things differently. So even though we have our virtual assistants that are capable to do anything, well, not almost anything. I think I'm over bragging over there. It's always important to make sure that there is some onboarding to see how you do your things, so they learn how you do it, because that is something we always try to make sure that they work for you the way you want them to work. That is something that is very important for us, because we know that in other virtual assistants, it's that kind of clash of how they were taught to do things versus how every person does things differently. So we always make sure our virtual assistants are open-minded and have a clear understanding what is needed to be done. Another thing we always try to implement as one of our values is being on time and honesty. We always make sure that even though if they make a mistake, they communicate to you as quickly as possible and make sure that they learn from those mistakes and really have an understanding of how to improve. Because like we always tell our virtual assistants is, the only way to become a better person is by learning from your mistakes, because no one's perfect. We all have made mistakes in the past. So it's always about at the beginning, learning something new or different compared to what you've learned in the past, there will be mistakes. But as long as those virtual assistants are improving the work and you see improvement day by day, you'll soon realize that after a month or 2 months, you're wondering why you didn't have it before. So before I open up to questions, just to give an idea of what we have available right now as virtual assistants, we have many virtual assistants who have a background in a lot of admin work. So a lot of administrative assistance, a lot of handling file organizing tasks, back-end stuff, documents. I know there's a lot of documents I'm imagining in the nursing staffing business. So having that organized I'm pretty sure it's a very challenge for you. So having someone who's capable to make sure that is up to date, organized, and easy to find is a very plus. Another thing that we also mentioned is our minimal project per week is 20 hours per week. That is the minimum we ask for our clients. The reason why we don't do less is we want our virtual assistants to feel like they're very dedicated. We have seen in the past that virtual assistants who have many jobs, like 2 or 3 different clients, get entwined with all the different things they're doing that they don't know who is who. So we feel if a virtual assistant has maximum 2 clients, they are very effective in the work. If you feel that you don't have enough tasks for 20 hours, we have been implementing lately and has seen some results in sharing a virtual assistant to complete those 20 hours. For example, you guys are all in the same group. Maybe 1 or 2 of you can combine to get the 20 hours for the virtual assistant. That way we can get the minimum. What we do ask in exchange for that is that one company handles all the contracts and billing. It's our back end, and that was something that we have discussed with many clients in the past. Because at the end of the day, the first time we did it with separate billing, it was not very successful and it was very confusing. But it's something that we feel like if it's very organized, we can have one virtual assistant part-time for 20 hours, share for both of you. I think I forgot to mention our prices. I know that's always very important. Nobody likes to hear it. But one thing for a full-time VA, which is 40 hours plus, is $9.99 per hour. And a part-time VA is $10.99 per hour. We do have other specialized VAs, which we call specialists. The specialists have more experience than a general VA. These have 3 or 5 years experience working in a particular area. And one of the reasons why they cost between $12 and $20, I know it's a big difference in range, is that most of these have different salary expectation and have much more job experience in a certain area. For example, a community manager, a marketing specialist. So it's very specific detail that requires years of experience. That's what we consider a specialist. If you have any questions, you can also stop me during the presentation. You can raise the emoji hand and I'll answer them right away, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably have questions by now.
Hey, so I'll go ahead and get started, guys, while you're thinking up your questions. Will, can you talk a little bit about the onboarding process and kind of the importance and types of trainings or systems that they get experience with through you all's orientation?
Great question, Shamika. Our onboarding session is very simple. I think, like Shamika, I don't know if you want also, after my presentation, go a little bit about your experience with working with Jesus, who has told me personally has loved working with you. Really is very simple. After this call, if you're very interested in maybe having a virtual assistant, we have a one-on-one call to go into details based on anything you need. For example, I know Jesus worked a lot with Shamika in certain areas, like in admin, human research and administrative assistance. When Shamika had that call with Victoria really tried to find out her needs, and specifically, based on those needs that she talked with Shamika during that call, we drafted a proposal. That proposal is very simple. It's no more than 6 pages, and it really explains all of what we do and all that. We also, with that proposal, send you a contract. The contract doesn't force you to pay us anything or hire us anyone. Apologize for the phone. It does protect us from you hiring directly in the VA, just to make sure that nobody direct hiring, which we have seen a lot in other markets and virtual assistants. Once you've signed the contract, we then, based on what the proposal we discussed with, all the account managers and the human resource team discuss, based on our pool of availability, who would be the best fit for the job description. We get around 2 or 3 candidates that best fit them. We then discuss it with the candidates to see if they're interested in the job. Once they give us the approval to send their profiles, we send them their CVs in audio entry. So that way you can hear their English level and know a little bit about them beforehand. If any virtual assistant catches your eye or you're interested in interviewing, you can have a one-on-one Zoom session with them. You can also, if you're not 100% sure which one you'd like, you can have an interview with all the candidates we show you. That way you can have a better understanding of which one you prefer, which one you feel is better fit for you. So what we normally see is all the candidates we present you, it's mostly their skill levels are very the same. One thing that we see is that maybe personalities, or maybe one of the reasons or not, you click with a virtual assistant. So that may be something that you prefer to see in person or you see right away. I think that's all. I don't know if Shamika wants to talk a little bit about her experience with Jesus. Maybe that way other people have questions.
Actually, we do have a question in the chat. And I think
I did not see that.
maybe, yes. Do you have VAs that specialize in sales?
Good question, Natasha, I see. We do have sales assistants, but a specialist with sales, we have seen in the past that is very tricky because many factors determine success in those projects are very external. It's not depending on the performance of the VA or the process the client has. So specialized in sales, we don't really have virtual assistants in because we feel that those projects, we have a very hard time measuring those projects to see if they're successful or not. We do have virtual assistants that can be sales assistants and help. And with some training, they can become sales specialists in sales, but it's not something that we can guarantee because like I said, there's a lot of external factors that we've seen in the past that we feel that those projects struggle a little bit.
And I'm going to piggyback a little bit, Natasha, and you can let me know in the chat or take yourself off mute if I'm kind of going down the road that you're looking for. I think she was referring to people to make cold calls or initial calls for potential clients. So I think some of that is skill-based, but it's also requiring you to do some training. As far as what you want them to say, how you want them to follow up that process. I will say in my experience with Jesus, and I think this is the case for all of the Valatam VAs, he does have experience with LinkedIn, which is a great pipeline for getting potential clients, as well as email campaigns and CRMs. So that kind of supports, based on where I think you're going with it, what you're trying to do, but to kind of get a salesperson, like Will is saying, it would even be difficult for you to really know that that's a best fit unless you're monitoring the number of calls and kind of have like clear outcomes. But from a skill standpoint of view, having somebody who's strong on LinkedIn will help with that, who understands email campaigns, Trello, CRMs, all those things that support what you guys are trying to do as far as reach out to potential clients.
Exactly. And just as a piggyback on the piggyback, cold calling is something that we have seen in the past, and it requires a lot of training because, like I said in the beginning of it's very personalized for each client. And sometimes those processes work, or sometimes they look on paper that they work, but external factors don't work. And like Shamika said, our lead generation works very well. LinkedIn, on job boards, all those are very good sources that we handle. Cold calling isn't our strength. And one of the reasons is that even though we may have virtual assistants who have previous experience working cold calling, one of the reasons they join us here in Valatam is to get away from cold calling. So for example, we've had many virtual assistants in the past. We have presented job descriptions that involve cold calling, and they have told us, thank you, but and explicitly say, I prefer not to do any cold calling. I've had experience in the past, but it's something I try to avoid. So it's become very challenging, not only when we do find a virtual assistant, but that virtual assistant gets complete the task the way the client wants. It's something that, like I said, about the sales specialist, we had a very hard time measuring what if it is a project successful and what is not. We have, and I think one of the reasons is it takes a lot of training. We have tried doing it in trial well to try to get this, and we've noticed that it may take more training than most clients are willing to take. So just to take in consideration, it's all about honesty here. It's one of our foundations. I don't want to promise you anything that we can't guarantee.
And I will say, in my experience, the research piece serves of more value, which is what a part of what Jesus does for me, than the cold call. Like, you guys already know how I feel about cold calls. I think you should do your own calls. But doing the research to get in touch with the right person is way more valuable to me than having someone kind of work a list just to get you to the right person. So, okay. Any more questions? And you can take yourself off mute since we're a small group. Rainey, I think you may have had a question. Or anyone else, if you have questions, definitely drop them in the chat.
Actually, Shamika, you did answer my question, because I was thinking about the cold calls too, but it was relevant what you just said. And I totally agree. We should be making our own cold calls, but getting in contact with the right person is really where the value is.
Okay. Anybody else? I will say this much, since Will mentioned it. Jesus, who's been my virtual assistant for almost 6 months now, is transitioning. So I kind of reached out to you all in the group because I would like him to continue to work with NOSAs. He kind of had experience with other NOSAs. So I wanted to give him the opportunity to continue to do his work with other NOSAs. And some of the things that he focused on while working with me that was important was around our CRM, a client relationship manager. He didn't do calls, but he definitely did quite a bit of research as far as finding the right person. He was heavy on doing social media for me and presentations. And then he also did some of the stuff you guys see on the Facebook group. So that was kind of an extension of the social media, and then some various administrative tasks for different things. So a big part of his role was social media driven. But I know that he has a strong background in LinkedIn. For some of you guys who might be somewhere, in the middle of the process looking for clients and stuff like that. So I've had a great experience with him. I'm more than happy to refer him to any of you guys if it's something that you're looking for. He's a great virtual assistant. And he has a knowledge base, because that's why, I put the post in the group. He has a knowledge base on what it means to work with a NOSA. So that's definitely something that's invaluable. So if you're interested in connecting with Jesus or doing an interview or getting some information, definitely feel free to reach out to Will or Victoria. If you want to talk with me further as far as his skill sets, he's way tech savvy, more tech savvy than I am. And that's what I needed at the time that we started. So he kind of organized and brought into play things that helped me do other things, which is what Will had mentioned early on. And being able to identify those things can be a little bit challenging in the beginning, but I encourage you guys to identify them so that, one, the training that you give them is appropriate, and then also that they're having a good experience as well. So I know some people use VAs in the group for cold calling, and then others may use it on the recruiting side. I feel confident and comfortable that he could operate on the recruiting side. That just wasn't where the need was for me at the time. But I do know there are a couple of other NOSAs, and that's why I said if you have questions, you can reach out to me, who do use their virtual assistants from Valatam to do recruiting. So kind of understanding where you want to be and kind of the goal is really important. And then because we don't work in person, you really want to have that technology piece down. We use Trello. I think that's kind of a common place to communicate, as well as really sit down and figure out the things, like individual things you want them to be working on, so that their time is is as valuable as yours when it comes to getting the work done. So, you guys don't have any more
Yeah.
questions?
No, I don't think so.
I do
Oh,
have
no,
another
Natasha.
question.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, awesome. So what tasks did you have your VA doing in LinkedIn? Can you share a little more? Yes.
Me? So he
Yes.
didn't do a lot of stuff in LinkedIn. So his biggest role for me was around social media. But in the interview, because you see his resume, I know that he has the LinkedIn, tell me what it's called again, experience and lead generation. So I think sometimes the words kind of get us a little mixed up. Lead generation is very equivalent to cold calling, but on LinkedIn. You get what I'm saying, Natasha?
Yes, I get it.
So that's why I said that about him. So he didn't do a lot of client outreach, but I know that he could.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly. And just to add a little bit more information, most clients, like Shamika probably saw, that's one example. You hire the VAs for one thing, and maybe 1 or 2, 3 months, based on what you've seen from them and the skills they provide, they might be doing something completely different. For example, I have a client who isn't nurse staffing, but it's a marketing firm, but didn't hire for anything marketing, and hire completely for social media. And after 6 months working with the client, she realized that the VA and her CV took a couple classes in marketing, and just took her under her wing, and now is running part of the department of marketing for the VA. Now has almost 11 months working for it. So it's really about trying to see what are the strengths of the VA, and we try to give you as much information beforehand so you know it. But there's some stuff that completely even we don't know, and you learn it for yourself because you're working more one-on-one with them. You learn much more than what we've learned during 1 month. And I think that is something that it makes our virtual assistants very well, that they are very talented, especially here in Latin America, which is the situation isn't always great. So most people here, very young people here, they are always trying to learn something new to see if they can find not a competitive edge, but a better opportunity to find employment. Mary, you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I was wondering, on the recruiting side, as far as the VAs, using the VAs to do that part, how do you measure, just the effectiveness of the VA? And, being that you're paying an hourly rate for that, how do you measure that in order to make sure you're getting the best value and the most out of it?
That's a very good question. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you can answer first, Shamika, and then I can add on if you prefer.
Well, I would say that works well. When it comes, because this isn't my first rodeo with virtual assistants, when it comes to recruiting, you want to have like hard goals. And in the industry in general, it's in place. Like, I feel like I saw an article, and if I find it again, I'll share it with you guys, that recruiters and staff for healthcare staffing in the United States maybe place 50 to 75 calls a day to applicants. Like, that's the minimum. So that's kind of set up as a part of their metrics. So what we did in our agency early on when we used VAs as recruiters is that we did that same thing. So we had in place, because we primarily use a vendor management system, hey, you need to reach out to 50 people, or because it's a VMS, you need to upload and activate 10 people every week or 5 people every week. And by them doing those activities or tasks, then you can know, hey, if this week when you check in, there's no one uploaded or you don't have any interviews set up, that's kind of indicative of maybe the work didn't get done. And I'm sure Will's going to chime in and say, you get with Valatam a purview of what they've been working on through the hub, I think it's called HubSpot, to
Hubstaff.
kind of, to keep track. So I personally didn't use it as much because we communicated through Trello and that worked for us. And I didn't have tight timelines on everything that he was doing. But something like that will kind of give you, hey, a second look. In addition to, we also did weekly meetings. So I'm really big on weekly meetings. So whether it was recruiting or social media VAs, I'm going to talk to you every week. And we're going to kind of answer questions or get some clarification. If you have any, questions around what your assignment is, so that by the following week or the end of that week, that assignment is, completed or worked on or, whatever, we decided. But having strong metrics on a weekly basis, I think is best because of what we do as far as what you want them to be doing.
Exactly. Just to add on here, we personally don't advertise any. If you ever do cold calling, we will never tell you how many a virtual assistant can do per day, because like I said, each person is very different. And like Shamika said, if you have certain goals, it is mostly, we personally feel here in Valatam, a team effort that you help the VA train to reach those goals. It is something that, which we feel like projects that don't work is that most clients just do cold calling. They just give them the setup and the virtual assistant's doing it by themselves. And then after 1 month, they don't see the results they were looking for and they stop services. But there wasn't any training or, like I said, Shamika, communication to improve. I think if you're really looking for cold calling and if it's something that you feel that you need, it's all about the effort you put in. And it's more of a long-term project than a short-term project. I think we have to probably see, I have to also check as well, how much effort the client puts into the cold calling for them to get the results they're looking for. But it's at the end of the day, something that we feel that, yes, we can do. It's not something that we prefer the virtual assistant to do, because it's something I think the client doesn't realize the effort it takes. For example, I do calls. I also do lead generation here. And I started in August here in Valatam. And the training I took for 3 or 4 months before I was able to do my own calls and communicate took 3 or 4 months. So that is something I also had to do a lot of shadowing with other people inside the company. We already have other account managers. So it's something that I think at first it seems simple, but once you get into it and you realize how much training people need to do sales very well, it might be something that you might have to consider maybe down the road. And like Shamika said, you know your clients, you know what you're looking for better than anyone else. Before we started having account managers here, our CEO, Dan, did calls himself. And I think if you look at all the account managers, which we have many now, nobody does it better than him, because he knows what he wants, what he's looking for, and he knows how to give it to the clients. So it's something that I think the cold calling, I'm just trying to be very honest with you, try to keep the perspective. It's something that you really have to dedicate to make sure that you understand what you're getting into.
And I'm going to say one other thing too, Mary, about that. And then Will, I want you to talk a little bit about like the systems that all the VAs have experience in. With recruiting, because there's so many pieces to it, you want to break it down. So you don't want to necessarily have the person that does the calls also be the person that does the interviews. And what I tell people is you want to kind of create some sort of priority. And then it goes on and on. Like, you don't want the person that does the calls to be the person that does the interview, to be the person that does compliance. Those really can be not necessarily 3 separate people. It could be a person, a system, and you. But to allow the VA to actually perfect their skill set in that area, you want them to focus on it, kind of like what Will was touching on. Our people, how we separated was we had one person who did interviews, and then we had one person that handled the compliance. And then that way you're able to more easily see what's happening with regards to their day-to-day, in addition to, of course, I highly encourage everybody, whether you work with Valatam or any VA, you need to have regular meetings with your people, like every week. Me and Jesus started doing every other week after maybe about 4 months, and have that constant communication, because we see things through our eyes. Like, people know about per diem, but everyday people don't even know what you mean when you say, well, are you going to pick up a per diem shift? Or are you going to work a contract or a travel contract? So there's a lot of terminologies and there's a bit of a learning curve when you start to work with some VAs, but it's not that they don't want to learn it. It's just that it's foreign to them, no different than if we talked about different topics in machinery or any other topic. You would have to kind of learn the basics to really feel like you can get started. I hope that answers your question, Mary.
Yes, it does. And I'm not sure if there's anybody else that wants to ask a question, but I just wanted to piggyback on the research and find out how you were able to utilize that. Were you giving him a specific topic to research, and were you giving him the tools on where to, or was once you give him the topic of research, would he then find out the information and give you the result?
Right. So, yeah, so I would give him, once we kind of got through the first couple of months and he kind of got a clear understanding of the industry, if there was a specific topic that I wanted him to research, whether it be to result with articles or websites, I would kind of give him a frame of reference and then give him a comparison. I don't have one off the top of my head, but the way that worked out better, or a place to go, I would say, hey, check out Google or go to SIA's website, see if you find anything on this, or go to LinkedIn. Let us know if you see anything there. So that's kind of what works best, is to give, and then he always came back with results, and usually in a Word document or a Google document. But what I would encourage you guys to consider too is, when I was deciding to change different softwares or platforms in running the business, I would have Jesus also do that. I was like, hey, give me the pros and cons of this system or that system, look into a couple of other options similar to this type of product or this type of service. And then of course he would come back and kind of list it out that way.
Thanks so much. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Great.
Sure thing. And like Shamika said, to talk a little bit how we track our virtual assistance activities. I know many of you might not feel like them not being with you by your side, knowing what they're doing. You wouldn't have to worry. We use a tracking system called Hubstaff, which I'm going to write right now in the group chat. What it does is that it takes random screenshots during a 10-minute interval to see, and it also checks on their activity level. If it has very low activity level, high level activity level, and it notifies us here directly in Valatam. And we can also give you access to that. So if you prefer to see what's going on, most of the times, I don't know if Shamika has access and looks at Jesus's information, but most of the time our clients are so busy that they don't have time to look at it. We will never deny you access, but we notice that most clients, they log in one time and never look at it again. So it's not that it's difficult to understand. It's that one of the reasons you have virtual assistants is so you can save time. And if you're looking at, if they're working 20 hours a week, that is over 200 screenshots. So right there, that is something like, it's like a no-go for people. So it's all about understanding and trust. But if you're 100% sure you want that information, we'll give it to you.
Right. And I was going to say too, Will, I think I might be able to show them a screenshot. That was the case for me. There was enough communication and results that I didn't really look at it. I did have access to it, but it wasn't something that I looked at. I think now I just get like summaries to say, but this is what it looks like. Okay. So this is kind of to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. And this is like the summary, because I didn't want to get it every day. And then you can go in and actually see activity. So, and as you can see, I don't go here very often, so I'm not sure where to start. Okay.
So go to,
Is that it?
If you go, go to time and activity. In
Oh, okay,
reports,
here.
time and activity.
Uh-huh.
An example, you can go to the calendar up top. So you can see all of Jesus's activity this month. Right here, you see the little calendar right there?
Let's see. Yes. Okay, here.
Yeah, exactly. You click right there.
So like last
And you
month.
probably said last month, for example, and you see how much hours he worked each day and the activity levels for each day. Activity levels really depends on the activity they're doing. For example, if it's for social media and they are doing a post, they're going to have very high activity level, because what the software does is it measures keyboard and mouse activity. It measures more keyboard than mouse. And it also takes a random screenshot in a 10-minute interval. So for example, we can see here with Jose, on February 1st, he worked almost 4 hours in a 59-minute activity level. That's a very good activity level. We probably range between 40 and 60%. But for example, like Shamika said, he's doing a lot of online research. It could go down because what he's doing is pretty much reading a lot. If it involves a lot of reading or a lot of video watching for training, we will see notice activity level. But because those things take a long time, the screenshot will probably take a screenshot during that time. And the software also has an advantage that if it detects another app that it considered that isn't approved, it will take a screenshot during that time as well. So for example, it's not like the VA is trying to cheat the system and, okay, it took a screenshot, now I'm going to go to watch Netflix. No, it makes sure that doesn't happen, because even though he knows like, oh, he took the screenshot, I have chance. No, that doesn't happen. And another reason is our VAs are very dedicated. None of them really, I personally haven't had a case of the virtual assistant not doing their work. We have had cases where the virtual assistant hasn't had enough tasks to do. And one of our policies is that if a virtual assistant doesn't have enough tasks to do, we do bill you for the full hours, which doesn't happen a lot. Like I said, most of our clients, there's always something the virtual assistant can do. So it really happens, but it's just to make sure that the time of the VA is used to its maximum potential.
Right. And that's why early on, I know a couple of you guys joined a little bit later, I mentioned about writing down what you want the VA to do.
Mhm.
You think, hey, it takes me 20 hours because that was the time that I had Jesus, but it may take them 1 hour. So you really want to list it out and also have ongoing activities. That was one of the things that we also did. So there were regular things that he did on a regular basis if things were maybe slow when it came to projects from me. So that kind of helped fill the time. And because it was connected to the NOSA group, there's nothing slow going on in the NOSA group. We're always doing something. And then, over time, you can have him do different things. Like when Jesus started, he wasn't one of the moderators in the NOSA group. It was just really focused on, because my goal was to focus on building up the social media. That was a focus. And then over time, he worked in the Facebook group. He works on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of my social media. He also does my YouTube page. So his experience grew as we kind of got more comfortable with working together.
Exactly. And I think maybe as a mini homework, if you're on the fence about having a virtual assistant, maybe tomorrow, when you're doing all your work, have a pad down and a timer. And for example, you check it's 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to do some calling. And you click the timer and you see how long it takes. So once you have in the end of the day, you see all the tasks you did and how long it took it. And maybe see that, this is something that I prefer not to do. And it took me 2 hours of my day to do. So once you start adding those things up, you start realizing if I can pay someone to do this stuff, I can do other stuff as well. So it's a little mini homework that when I have call with people who aren't 100% sure, do. And that's when they realize this is what I need, this is what I don't need. And then based on that, we can get a good jumping off point.
Hey, Will, as we wrap up, if you guys have any questions, feel free to take yourself off of mute. Can you drop the contact information again, just so that it'll float to the top? Will works with Victoria, so her contact information is there. It's also listed in the group. I myself have worked with Valatam. it through a referral. And I believe, and you can quote me if I'm wrong, there's maybe about 5 or so NOSAs currently working with Valatam virtual assistants and are having good experiences in various roles. So some of them do social media, some of them do recruiting, some of them do a mix of both. I think most of the NOSAs have their VAs for the 20 hours. And I know Will mentioned earlier about splitting the 20 hours with another NOSA if you feel like maybe you don't have enough work. So that's definitely a good option as well. But it's in your best benefit to really sit down, like he said, and kind of come up with the things that you want them to be doing. So if you guys don't have any other questions, we'll give it a minute. I think that's all Will has. I'll stay on here for a little bit longer if you want to ask like questions about my experience, or I've kind of already given the tips about working with virtual assistants. Let's see, was there anything else? Communication is a big, big thing. And it's even more of a big thing when you have to work virtually. So communication, I think for me, communication and technology were the areas that I had a learning curve. So, okay, April, are you going to unmute yourself? You can ask. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
So Shamika, this was for you. If you mentioned it, I'm sorry, I came in a little late, but what do you exactly use your VA for? I did have an appointment with Valatam and fulfill that. They did send me a person to look over for interviews or whatnot, but for you, I just wanted to know exactly what you used your VA for.
Okay, I'm gonna mute this person. Okay, so with Valatam, April, I used him primarily for social media and research and some LinkedIn stuff. I've had other VAs that I've used for recruiting and compliance related stuff. The most important thing when it comes to kind of determining, hey, which area should I focus on, is based on one, where you want the business to grow. So like that was part of adding somebody, is that you're growing. So I wanted the social media for the business to grow. So that's why that was his focus. And also how much time you have to train them. So for those of you guys who are looking for VAs to drop into the recruiting space, it's a great idea in theory, but if you don't have the time to train them on recruiting, you will struggle. I've talked to a couple of NOSAs who have gotten VAs and, hey, you want them to recruit, or even with cold calling, and it hasn't been as successful because that's really a skill that you have to teach somebody. Nobody innately, even for me, I know about recruiting because I worked in human resources. So it's not something that you'll innately know how to do, versus it could take a little bit of time to learn. Versus if you have them do like compliance where they're looking at documents or uploading documents, that's a little bit easier. So I think some people struggle with VAs in that they have a much higher expectation of the role than the reality, and then sometimes don't always take into account the virtual piece. So I too, April, have used my VA for LinkedIn. And we talked earlier, and if Will, you want to chime in too, about the lead generation kind of being comparable to cold calling.
Yeah, sure thing. So the real difference between calling and LinkedIn is that instead of you using the phone, you're just writing a message on LinkedIn. And I think the difference between going through a list and using LinkedIn gives you so much information. I personally use LinkedIn each day just trying to find potential clients. And it's really, really great, especially after you understand what you're looking for. It becomes much more easier. So as time goes on with the virtual assistant, trying to do lead generation, maybe through LinkedIn, or I don't know if there's like an Indeed for nursing. I don't know if there isn't, that's a great idea to start implementing. So it's all about that. So for example, I know Jesus probably helped you and probably give you more information before you did a call than you just having a random cold call with a person that you probably had on a list. And I think that's a big advantage that lead generation has. The so much pre-information you can have, you can personalize the message. What we do here internally is that we pretty much research the potential client that we feel that's a good fit, see what kind of roles that they've looked in the past, maybe on Indeed or Monster, and see how, and then we present ourselves in a way that is very appealing to that person to see if they can are interested. It's not always you're not going to hit on everyone. Nobody's 100%, but we feel like it's much more personalized than a random phone call. Because I know sometimes not everybody's in the mood to be sold on the phone. Sometimes it's great when they have time to sit down in LinkedIn and read their messages. It's much more it's much more less invasive than having a call. So because you never know what kind of situation that person is when you're doing a call. And we personally feel that one of our strengths as well is lead generation. And I think it's much more, you get a better quality candidate than probably cold call.
And two, I'll say, to help people kind of understand the difference, cold call is exactly that. It's very cold. What LinkedIn lead generation is really warm calls.
Mhm.
And if you have a VA doing some of that prep work for you, they will have gotten enough information for you to have a quality conversation, then, which is what I've recommended people to do, then only going to the Medicare.gov site, looking up nursing homes, and then maybe Googling them, maybe not, or just kind of calling that nursing home that's 2 miles from your house. So the warm call they've identified who the administrator is. They maybe have even tiered them down to a DON or what have you. They have a name. They know that they're currently working there. They may know where else they've worked. So it's a different type of phone call for you, and they'll provide you enough information to feel more confident in the call with whatever training you provide. So if you say, hey, I want all this information, can you look to see if they have job openings on Indeed? Can you also look to make sure, if there's other facilities, similar facilities or similar, sister properties in that area? So that's something that you have to really format. And that's why, because Natasha asked a similar question, I said, cold calling can be tricky for VAs, but lead generation, as long as you have a proper template for them, is a lot better. Does that answer your question, April?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Okay, Mary, we got another question.
Yes, please. Just on the lead generation, because that's not something I've done before or heard of. I've just done mostly cold calling. So I'm not familiar with it, but it's a very interesting concept as I hear it. But I know Will mentioned that is a strength of Valatam VAs. So do you give the VA a geography, or what kind of details do you give the VA, or do they just, like what kind of details do you give to have a successful lead generation?
Absolutely. I think all of you own your businesses, which is a great plus. You know the client you're looking for. If you explain what you're looking for in a client, the virtual assistant will help you narrow down using the lead generation. We always recommend when you're doing lead generations, have a template to how you want the virtual. If you're not going to respond on virtual assistant, if you're going to respond on LinkedIn, have a template for the virtual assistant to give as a message to the contact on LinkedIn, because like I said, they'll do the job for you, but the first person who knows your business at the beginning will be you. Once they have time to know your business and how you run it, that's when they start adding their style, because it's very difficult, especially for people virtually, to input what they're looking for when they have very few background information on your business. For example, nursing, so all this nurse staffing, it's very hard for us to find, and we've tried since we started working with the NOSA group to try to find more virtual assistants who can handle the needs of all you guys in this group. And it's very difficult in here in Latin America, because most of the people who have the experience here are a little bit hesitant to work online. So that's just to be example. So I think if you have an understanding of what you're looking for as a client, and you give that knowledge to the virtual assistant in the beginning and give them a template, listen, contact them this, or just find me these type of clients on LinkedIn and I do the rest. At the beginning, that's how we feel that's best work. And then later on, in a couple of months, they start adding based on how they work. Listen, I think we can also add this as well. I think that extra input, that initiative that our virtual assistants have, at first it might not be there, but once you've worked with them for a couple of months, then you start seeing the impact.
And a lot of what you'll provide, Mary, is just a script. So you'll provide them the way this is the way that I would work it, is that you'll provide them some of the content or information you get from Medicare.gov. I'm looking for long-term care nursing facilities and the zip code, with this many number of residents or not, LTAC, no, this area, yes. I'm looking to connect with the decision maker who might be the administrator, the director of nursing, the nurse supervisor, the floor manager. These are some of the titles that they may also go by. I'm looking to get an email, name and address. So that's kind of what Will is saying is the template that you provide, which is a lot of what you find when you create your email, your initial contact email, for those of you guys who send out cold emails, to have them generate and start kind of searching. I'm big on technology. That's kind of one of the biggest push this year. And it's important for NOSAs to be on that as well, because that is not only our future, but that's really what's happening in real time. Employers and decision makers hang out on LinkedIn. They make connections on LinkedIn. I've gotten contracts on LinkedIn. Other NOSAs have gotten contracts on LinkedIn. So if you're not there, you're kind of missing that window. But also, if you're not comfortable, Mary, I totally get you. And it's not something that you fully understand, you want to work or partner with somebody who gets it, who just says, hey, provide me the template. And then by month 2, 3, they tweaked the response. Because we've all gotten the lead generation on LinkedIn. It's an auto message, hey, thanks, or the reach out already. We just don't know it's called lead generation in LinkedIn. But there are usually people behind that's their jobs, to find, look, narrow down, and then you can start to continue to tailor the messaging that'll kind of get you closer to getting your yes or interview or call with your first or potential client. And we'll do something on it. I did something, I want to say last Saturday for Social Media Saturday. So we'll do something more on it. But that skill set is extremely important. And what Will was saying is that's a skill set that they focus on all of their VAs having. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you a one-up to me when it comes to kind of maneuvering through that cold calling and acquiring the clients. So any more questions? You guys have some great questions. I appreciate it. Okay, so it's almost 4, so we're gonna wrap up. If you guys don't have any more questions, I definitely encourage you. Will's information, Victoria's information is down here. It's also located in the post in the group. They're both available to have calls with you guys as far as determining what you need. If you're still on the fence, I encourage you, whether it's with them or any other company, to really sit down and figure out, what do you need? Like, what are the skills, what are the qualities, and what are the tasks that you want these individuals to be doing, so that you're able to make the right fit. You get a great opportunity to not only have calls with people that you look at resumes and see, hey, they're great, but you can look at all of the people or some of the people kind of based on where you are in the process, which is really nice, to make sure that, hey, this makes sense. Like I mentioned before, if you guys want to talk to me or any of the other NOSAs who are using Valatam, about our experiences, you can feel free to do so offline. I can provide you the other NOSAs who are using them for recruiting. Like I mentioned, my focus was social media and administrative and research and LinkedIn based stuff. So that's kind of where we stayed. And, definitely reach out. I mentioned to you guys about Jesus, so he's familiar. So if you're looking to talk with him or anybody or want to see, definitely feel free to reach out as well. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Will. I appreciate all your time. And I'll let Victoria know. I think did you get a chance to capture all the people that attended? If you haven't gotten a chance, let's stop.